Keanu Reeves pushed open the glass door of the McDonald's on Sunset Boulevard. The familiar smell of French fries and burgers hit him as he stepped inside. He had been filming all morning, and his stomach was growling. The movie set was only 2 blocks away, but he needed a quick break from the cameras and the noise. The restaurant was busy for a Tuesday afternoon. Families sat at plastic tables, kids playing with Happy Meal toys while their parents scrolled through phones. Keanu pulled his baseball cap lower over his eyes and walked to the counter. He hoped nobody would recognize him today. "Can I help? You?" asked the teenage worker behind the register. Her name tag said Jenny. "Yeah, I'll take a Big Mac meal with a Coke," Keanu said. He pulled out his wallet and waited while Jenny punched buttons on the screen. "That'll be $8.50, she said with a smile. Keanu handed her a $10 bill and waited for his change. Behind him, he could hear the normal sounds of the restaurant. People talking, children laughing, the beep of the fryer in the kitchen. It was peaceful in a strange way. "Excuse me, mister." Keanu turned around. A small boy was standing next to him. The kid couldn't have been more than 5 years old. He had messy brown hair and big green eyes. He wore a red t-shirt with a cartoon dinosaur on it and blue jeans with grass stains on the knees. "Hey there, buddy," Keanu said, crouching down to the boy's level. "Are you here with your mom or dad?" The boy nodded toward a woman sitting at a corner table. She was reading something on her phone while eating a salad. She had the same brown hair as the kid, pulled back in a ponytail. She looked tired, like she had been working all day. "My mom," the boy said. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "That's good," Keanu said. "What's your name?" "Danny," the boy replied. He stepped closer to Keanu, looking around the restaurant like he was checking to see if anyone was watching them. Keanu noticed something strange about the kid. Most 5-year-olds were bouncy and loud. They asked a million questions and couldn't sit still. But Danny was different. He stood very still, his green eyes focused and serious. There was something almost adult about the way he looked at Keanu. "Danny's a good name," Keanu said. "I'm Keanu." "I know who you are," Danny whispered. He moved even closer, so close that only Keanu could hear him. "I need to tell you something important." Keanu felt a strange chill run down his back. The way Danny said it made his skin crawl. There was something in the boy's voice that didn't belong to a 5-year-old. It was too calm, too certain. "What is it, buddy?" Keanu asked, trying to keep his voice normal. Danny looked around the restaurant one more time. Then he stood on his tiptoes and put his small hand on Keanu's shoulder. His mouth was right next to Keanu's ear. "The silver ships are coming tonight," Danny whispered. His breath was warm against Keanu's ear, but his words made Keanu's blood turn cold. "They're looking for the one who dreams of electric sheep." Keanu's face went completely white. His hand started shaking and he had to grab the counter to keep from falling down. Those words. How could a 5-year-old know those words? How could anyone know those words? "What did you say?" Keanu whispered back, his voice barely making any sound. But Danny had already stepped back. He looked at Keanu with those serious green eyes, nodded once, and then walked back to his mother's table. He sat down and started coloring in a book, like nothing had happened. Keanu stood up slowly, his legs feeling weak. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might jump out of his chest. He looked around the McDonald's, but everything seemed normal. Families eating, kids playing, workers cleaning tables. Nobody else had heard what Danny said. With shaking hands, Keanu pulled out his phone. He didn't dial 911 like a normal person would. Instead, he pressed a series of numbers that most people didn't know existed. The phone rang twice before someone answered. "This is Control," said a voice on the other end. It was a woman's voice, calm and professional. "This is Neo," Keanu said quietly using his code name. "I need immediate extraction protocol 7. "Location?" the voice asked. "McDonald's on Sunset Boulevard. I've got a contact situation." "Nature of contact?" Keanu looked over at Danny, who was still coloring peacefully next to his mother. "A child just gave me the silver ship message." There was silence on the other end of the phone for several seconds. "Are you certain?" the voice finally asked. 100% certain, Keanu replied. He used the exact phrase. Stay where you are. Do not let the child or his guardian leave. Team is moving to your location now. ETA, 4 minutes. The phone went dead. Keanu put it back in his pocket and tried to look normal. His food was ready, but he had lost his appetite completely. Instead, he found an empty table where he could watch Danny and his mother. The woman was still reading on her phone, completely unaware that her son had just said something that could change the world. Her name was Lisa, according to the purse sitting next to her that had her driver's license sticking out of the top. Lisa Martinez, age 32, from an address in North Hollywood. Danny finished coloring and looked up at Keanu. For just a moment, their eyes met across the restaurant. The boy smiled, but it wasn't the innocent smile of a 5-year-old. It was the smile of someone who knew a very big secret. Less than 4 minutes later, 3 black SUVs pulled up outside the McDonald's. Men and women in dark suits got out and walked quickly toward the entrance. They moved like they had done this many times before. The first agent through the door was a tall man with gray hair and cold blue eyes. He walked straight to Keanu's table. Mr. Reeves, he said quietly. Agent Clark, we need to secure the package immediately. Keanu nodded toward Danny's table. The boy in the red shirt. His mother doesn't know anything. Agent Clark looked over at Danny, who was now stacking napkins into a small tower. The boy looked up and waved at the agent like they were old friends. Jesus, Agent Clark whispered. How old is he? 5, Keanu replied. Maybe 6. More agents had entered the restaurant now. They were trying to look casual, but Keanu could see them positioning themselves at all the exits. Nobody was going to leave until they figured out what was happening. Agent Clark walked over to Lisa's table and pulled out his badge. Agent Clark showed his badge to Lisa Martinez, but she barely looked at it. She was too busy staring at all the people in suits who had suddenly filled the McDonald's. Her face was pale and confused. Ma'am, I'm Agent Clark with the Department of Homeland Security, he said in a calm voice. We need to ask you and your son a few questions. Questions about what? Lisa asked, pulling Danny closer to her. We're just eating lunch. We didn't do anything wrong. Danny looked up at his mother with those serious green eyes. It's okay, Mom, he said softly. They're the good guys. Lisa stared at her son. How could he know that? How could a 5-year-old tell who the good guys were just by looking at them? Mrs. Martinez, Agent Clark said, your son may have information that's important to national security. We need to take both of you somewhere safe where we can talk. I'm not going anywhere. With you, Lisa said, standing up and holding Danny's hand tight. You can't just take people away because you want to ask questions. Agent Clark looked over at Keanu, who was still sitting at his table watching everything. Keanu nodded and walked over to them. Lisa, Keanu said gently, I know this is scary, but these people are trying to help. Your son told me something that only a few people in the world are supposed to know. We need to figure out how he knows it. What did he tell you? Lisa asked. Keanu looked around the restaurant. Other customers were starting to notice all the people in suits. Some were taking pictures with their phones. This wasn't the place to explain everything. We'll tell you everything once we get somewhere private, Keanu said. I promise you, nobody wants to hurt Danny. We just need to understand what's happening. Danny tugged on his mother's shirt. Mom, we should go with them, he said. The voice in my head says it's time. Lisa's mouth fell open. What voice, Danny? What voice in your head? But before Danny could answer, Agent Clark was already guiding them toward the door. 2 other agents cleared a path through the curious customers while a third one stayed behind to talk to the McDonald's manager. Outside, one of the black SUVs was waiting with its engine running. Agent Clark opened the back door and helped Lisa and Danny get inside. Keanu got in after them and Agent Clark sat in the front passenger seat. Where are you taking us? Lisa asked as the SUV pulled away from the McDonald's. Somewhere safe, Agent Clark replied. About 20 minutes from here. Danny was looking out the window, watching the city go by. He seemed completely calm, like riding in government cars, happened to him every day. "Danny," Lisa said, "what did you mean about a voice in your head?" Danny turned to look at his mother. "It started 3 days ago," he said. "At first it was just whispers when I was sleeping, but yesterday it got louder. The voice told me to find the man who played Neo in the movies. It told me exactly what to say to him." Keanu felt his skin crawl again. "Danny, can you hear the voice right now?" Danny nodded. "It's always there now. It sounds like a lady, but not exactly like a human lady. She sounds older, like she's been alive for a really long time." "What is she telling you now?" Keanu asked. Danny closed his eyes and listened. "She says we're going to meet a doctor who studies aliens. She says the doctor has been waiting for me." Lisa grabbed Danny's arm. "Aliens? What are you talking about? Danny, this isn't funny anymore. I'm not trying to be funny, Mom," Danny said. "The voice lady is from space. She's been trying to talk to kids like me all over the world." The SUV turned into a parking garage under a tall office building. They drove down 3 levels before stopping next to an elevator that had no buttons on the outside. Agent Clark used a key card to open the doors. Inside the elevator there were buttons for floors that didn't exist in normal buildings. Agent Clark pressed the button marked B7. The elevator went down for what felt like a very long time. When the doors opened, they were in a hallway that looked like something from a science fiction movie. The walls were white and smooth, and bright lights ran along the ceiling. Men and women in lab coats walked back and forth carrying tablets and folders. "Welcome to Project Starwatch," Agent Clark said as they walked down the hallway. "This facility has been here for 30 years, but most people don't know it exists." They stopped at a door marked Dr. Patricia Webb, Xenobiology. Agent Clark knocked twice and then opened the door without waiting for an answer. The office inside was bigger than it looked from the hallway. One wall was covered with computer screens showing star charts and strange symbols. Another wall had pictures of things that definitely weren't from Earth. A woman in her 50s sat behind a desk covered with papers and books. "Dr. Webb," Agent Clark said, "this is Danny Martinez and his mother Lisa, and I think you already know Mr. Reeves." Dr. Webb looked up from her papers. She had gray hair pulled back in a bun and kind brown eyes behind thick glasses. When she saw Danny, she smiled. "Hello, Danny," she said. "I've been waiting to meet you for a long time." "How do you know my son?" Lisa demanded. "Who are you people?" Dr. Webb stood up and walked around her desk. "Mrs. Martinez, I know this is confusing and frightening. Please, sit down and I'll explain everything." Lisa and Danny sat in chairs in front of the desk. Keanu stood behind them with his arms crossed. "Danny is what we call a receiver," Dr. Webb began. "About once every 10 years we find children who can hear voices from space. Usually it's just 1 or 2 kids in the whole world. But in the last month we found 12. 12 kids hearing voices?" Keanu asked. 12 kids hearing the same voice, Dr. Webb corrected. "The voice belongs to someone calling herself the Navigator. She's part of a group of aliens who have been trying to contact Earth for years." Danny raised his hand like he was in school. "The Navigator says her people are called the Zenith Collective. They're not bad aliens. They're running away from something really scary." Dr. Webb nodded. "That's right, Danny. The Zenith Collective isn't trying to invade Earth. They're refugees. They're running from something they call the Void Swarm." Lisa shook her head. "This is crazy. You're telling me my 5-year-old son is talking to aliens?" "Not just talking to them," Dr. Webb said. "Learning from them. Danny, can you tell your mother what the Navigator taught you about the silver ships?" Danny closed his eyes again. "She says the silver ships are the Collective's spaceships. They'll arrive tonight just after sunset. They're going to hide behind the moon so people don't panic. But the Void Swarm is only 3 days behind them." "What's the Void Swarm?" Keanu asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Danny opened his eyes, and for a moment he looked much older than 5 years old. "It's the thing that eats planets," he said quietly. "It already ate the Collective's homeworld and 3 others. Now it's coming here." The room was completely quiet for several seconds. But the navigator says humans might be able to stop it. Danny continued. She says our brains work different than other aliens. We think in ways that confuse the swarm. Dr. Webb sat back down at her desk. That's why we've been preparing for this day for 30 years. We've been training people like Keanu to use their minds as weapons. Lisa looked at Keanu with wide eyes. You knew about this? You knew aliens were coming? Keanu nodded. Not exactly. When? But we knew it was possible. That's why I made movies like The Matrix. We were preparing people's minds for the idea that reality might not be what it seems. Danny suddenly sat up straight in his chair. The navigator says it's time to contact the other kids. They're all getting scared because their parents don't believe them. Dr. Webb turned to her computer and started typing. Danny's right. We're getting reports from around the world. A girl in Japan, a boy in Germany, twins in Brazil. They're all hearing the same message. What's the message? Agent Clark asked. Danny stood up and walked to the window, even though there was nothing to see 3 floors underground. The message is simple, he said. Get ready. Tonight, everything changes. Dr. Webb's computer screen filled with red dots scattered across a world map. Each dot represented a child who was hearing the navigator's voice. Danny walked over to look at the screen, his small finger pointing at different locations. That's Emma in Tokyo, he said, touching one of the red dots. She's 7 years old and really scared. Her parents think she's making up stories. How do you know her name? Dr. Webb asked, adjusting her glasses. The navigator shows me all the other kids sometimes, Danny replied. We're all connected. Now, Emma speaks Japanese, but I can understand her when she talks to the navigator. Lisa watched her son with growing amazement and fear. 3 days ago, Danny had been a normal 5-year-old who spent his time playing with toy trucks and watching cartoons. Now he was talking about children on the other side of the world, like he knew them personally. Danny, can you tell us about the other children? Dr. Webb asked, pulling out a notebook. Danny nodded and pointed to another dot on the map. That's Carlos in Mexico City. He's 6 years old and his grandmother believes him. She thinks he's talking to angels. He moved his finger to a dot in Europe. That's Ben in London. He's 8 and very smart. His parents are scientists, so they're doing tests on him. Agent Clark was writing everything down. What about the twins you mentioned? Ana and Luis in Brazil, Danny said. They're 4 years old. They can both hear the navigator, but they don't understand what she's saying yet. The navigator says little kids hear better than older kids, but they can't understand as much. Dr. Webb looked at her computer screen and typed something. Danny, we're going to try to contact these other children. Can you help us? I don't need to help you contact them, Danny said. I can talk to them right now if you want. Everyone in the room stared at him. Lisa grabbed his hand. What do you mean, Danny? Danny sat down on the floor in the middle of the room. The navigator taught me how to connect with the other kids. It's like a phone call, but inside our heads. He closed his eyes and became very still. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Danny started speaking, but his voice sounded different. It was still his voice, but the words came out in a strange rhythm. Emma, can you hear me? It's Danny from America. Dr. Webb quickly turned on a recording device. Keep talking, Danny. Danny's face changed slightly, like he was listening to someone far away. Emma says yes. She can hear me. She's at school right now. She's happy that someone believes her. Ask her what the navigator told her about tonight, Dr. Webb said. Danny was quiet for a few seconds. Emma says the navigator told her to watch the sky after dark. The silver ships will look like new stars at first, but they'll move in patterns that regular stars don't make. Agent Clark leaned forward. Can you talk to the boy in London? Danny's expression changed again. Ben, this is Danny. The grown-ups here want to know what you've learned. This time Danny was quiet for almost a minute. His face showed concentration, like he was trying to understand something difficult. Ben says his parents have been testing him all day, Danny finally said. They put him in a special machine that looks at his brain. The machine showed that his brain is working different than normal kids' brains. Different how? Dr. Webb asked. Parts of his brain that are usually quiet are very active. Ben says it's like his brain grew new rooms that weren't there before. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Danny, has this happened to your brain too? Danny opened his eyes and looked at his mother. I think so, Mom. I can think about things I never thought about before, and I can see pictures in my head that the navigator sends me. What kind of pictures? Keanu asked. Danny stood up and walked to Dr. Webb's wall of strange photos. He pointed to one that showed a dark cloud with purple lightning inside it. Like that, but bigger. Much bigger. Dr. Webb looked at the photo Danny was pointing to. That's an artist's drawing of what we think the void swarm might look like. Danny, has the navigator shown you the real thing? Danny nodded. It's not just one thing, it's millions of things that think together like one big brain. They look like black smoke, but they're alive. When they touch a planet, everything on that planet stops thinking. Stops thinking? Agent Clark asked. Everything becomes part of the swarm, Danny explained. People, animals, plants, even rocks and water. The swarm eats their thoughts and memories and then moves on to the next planet. The room was quiet except for the humming of computers. Everyone was trying to imagine something that could eat an entire world's thoughts. The navigator says the swarm has been traveling through space for thousands of years. Danny continued. It's eaten hundreds of planets. The Zenith Collective is the first group that ever escaped from it. How did they escape? Dr. Webb asked. Danny closed his eyes again, listening to the voice in his head. They built the silver ships really fast and ran away while the swarm was busy eating their planet. But they couldn't save everyone. Most of their people became part of the swarm. Lisa put her arm around Danny. That's horrible. The navigator says it was the saddest day in their history, Danny said. But they learned something important. The swarm has trouble with thoughts that don't make sense. Random thoughts and crazy ideas confuse it. Keanu suddenly understood something. That's why they chose Earth. Humans are good at thinking randomly. Exactly, Danny said, smiling at Keanu. The navigator says humans are the most unpredictable thinkers in the galaxy. We think about things that don't exist, like unicorns and dragons. We tell stories that aren't true but feel real. We dream about impossible things. Dr. Webb was typing notes as fast as she could. So the collective wants to use human creativity as a weapon against the swarm? Not just use it, Danny corrected. They want to teach us how to make our thoughts stronger. The navigator says that with the right training, humans could project our thoughts into space like invisible arrows. Agent Clark's phone rang. He answered it and listened for a moment. That was our facility in Germany. The boy there, Ben, just told his parents the same thing Danny's telling us, word for word. Because we're all hearing the same lesson, Danny said. The navigator is teaching all 12 of us at the same time. We're like students in a class, but the classroom is inside our heads. Dr. Webb looked at her watch. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If the ships arrive at sunset, that gives us about 4 hours to prepare. Prepare for what? Lisa asked. The navigator says the collective will send down teachers tonight, Danny said. They'll teach the grown-ups what they taught us kids, but the grown-ups' brains are different. Learning might be harder for them. How much harder? Keanu asked. Danny looked at him with those serious green eyes. The navigator says some grown-ups won't be able to learn at all. Their brains are too set in their ways, but others, like you, have been practicing for years without knowing it. Practicing what? Thinking about impossible things and believing they could be real, Danny said. Every time you pretended to be Neo in the movies, you were training your brain to accept that the impossible might be possible. Dr. Webb stood up and walked to her window, even though it only showed the underground parking garage. Danny, how many people on Earth do you think can learn what the collective wants to teach? Danny was quiet for a long time, listening to the navigator. She says maybe 1 in 1,000 people, maybe less. That means only a few million people out of 8 billion, Agent Clark said. But the navigator says it might be enough, Danny replied. She says it only takes a few people thinking the right thoughts to confuse the swarm. Quality is more important than quantity. Lisa looked around the room at all the adults who were hanging on every word her 5-year-old son said. What happens if we can't learn? What happens if we can't stop this swarm thing? Danny walked over to his mother and took her hand. Then Earth becomes like all the other planets the swarm has eaten, empty and quiet forever. But that's not going to happen, he added quickly, seeing the fear on his mother's face. The navigator chose Earth for a reason. She believes humans can do things that no other species in the galaxy can do. Dr. Webb turned back to face them. Then we better start learning fast. Danny, can you contact the other children and tell them to have their parents bring them to government facilities? We need to gather everyone together. Danny nodded. I'll tell them, but the navigator says we need to be ready for something else too. What? Everyone asked at the same time. The swarm knows the collective is here now. It's moving faster than it usually does. The navigator thought we had 3 days, but now she thinks we might only have 1 day. Agent Clark grabbed his phone and started dialing. I need to call the Pentagon. If those ships are arriving tonight and the swarm is coming tomorrow, we need to alert every government on Earth. Will they believe us? Dr. Webb asked. Danny smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. They'll believe us when they see the silver ships. The navigator says the collective is done hiding. Tonight the whole world will know that aliens are real. The sun was setting over Los Angeles when the first silver ship appeared in the sky. It looked like a bright star at first, just as Emma in Tokyo had said it would. But then it started moving in slow circles, and everyone who saw it knew it wasn't a normal star. Danny was standing on the roof of the Project Starwatch building with his mother, Dr. Webb, Keanu, and Agent Clark. They had been watching the sky for 20 minutes when the ship appeared. There it is, Danny said quietly. The navigator says that's her ship. More silver shapes began appearing across the sky. They were beautiful, like pieces of metal that caught the last light of the sun. Some were round, others were long and thin. They moved without making any sound, floating through the air like fish swimming through water. How many ships are there? Lisa asked, holding Danny's hand tight. Danny closed his eyes and listened to the voice in his head. The navigator says there are 50 ships total. Each one has about 1,000 collective members on it. They've been traveling for 3 years. To get here, Dr. Webb was taking pictures with a special camera. Danny, are they going to land? Not yet, Danny replied. First, they want to make sure Earth's governments won't attack them. The navigator is trying to contact your leaders right now. Agent Clark's phone rang. He answered it and talked quietly for a few minutes. When he hung up, his face was pale. That was the Pentagon, he said. Every military base in the world is seeing these ships. The president wants to know if we should shoot them down. No, Danny said loudly. The navigator says if anyone attacks the ships, they'll have to leave. And if they leave, the swarm will eat Earth with no one to help us. Keanu knelt down next to Danny. Can you tell the navigator that we want to help? That we won't attack? Danny nodded and closed his eyes again. He was quiet for a long time, longer than usual. When he opened his eyes, he looked worried. The navigator says 3 of Earth's governments are preparing to attack the ships. She says they don't believe the ships are here to help. Which governments? Agent Clark asked, already reaching for his phone. She won't tell me, Danny said. But she says if even one missile is fired at the ships, all 50 ships will leave immediately. Dr. Webb grabbed Agent Clark's arm. You have to call everyone you know in the government. They have to understand that these aliens are refugees, not invaders. Agent Clark was already dialing. I'll try, but you know how this works. When people see alien ships, their first thought is to shoot them down. While Agent Clark made his calls, Danny walked to the edge of the roof. He stared up at the silver ships floating silently above the city. Danny, his mother said. What else is the navigator telling you? She's sad, Danny said. She's showing me pictures of her home planet before the swarm came. It was beautiful. They had cities that floated in the clouds and oceans that were purple instead of blue. What happened when the swarm arrived? Dr. Webb asked. Danny's face became very serious. It started as a small, dark cloud at the edge of their solar system. At first, the collective thought it was just space dust, but then the cloud began growing, bigger and moving toward their planets. How fast did it move? Keanu asked. Slower than their ships, but much bigger, Danny replied. The navigator says it was like trying to run away from a storm that covered half the sky. Even when they flew as fast as they could, the swarm kept getting closer. Lisa sat down on a chair someone had brought up to the roof. Danny, you said, the swarm eats thoughts. How does that work exactly? Danny turned away from the ships to look at his mother. The navigator is showing me now. When the swarm touches something, it sends out tiny pieces of itself that go inside living things. The pieces connect to their brains and steal all their memories and thoughts. Does it hurt? Dr. Webb asked. The navigator says no. The person just stops being themselves. They become part of the swarm's big brain. All their knowledge and memories become part of the swarm, but they lose everything that made them special. Agent Clark finished his phone calls and walked back to the group. I've got good news and bad news. The good news is that the United States, Canada, and most of Europe have agreed not to attack the ships. The bad news is that 3 countries are refusing to listen. Which countries? Dr. Webb asked. I can't say their names, but they're all countries that don't trust anyone else. They think this is some kind of trick. Danny suddenly grabbed Keanu's hand. The navigator says one of those countries just launched missiles at the ships. Everyone looked up at the sky. The silver ships were still floating peacefully above them, but now they seemed to be moving slightly faster. How long do the missiles take to reach the ships? Lisa asked. The navigator says about 10 minutes, Danny replied. But she also says the ships have defenses. They won't be hurt by the missiles. Then why are they preparing to leave? Keanu asked. Because they promised themselves they would never fight again, Danny said. After the swarm destroyed their world, the collective decided they would only help people who wanted to be helped. If Earth's governments attack them, it means Earth doesn't want their help. Agent Clark was talking on his phone again, shouting at someone. Cancel those missiles. Do you understand me? Cancel them right now or we're all dead. But it was too late. High above them, small flashes of light appeared in the sky as the missiles exploded harmlessly against invisible shields around the silver ships. Danny started crying. The navigator says they have to go now. She's sorry. But they can't help people who attack them. The silver ships began rising higher into the sky. They moved slowly at first, but then faster and faster until they looked like shooting stars disappearing into space. Wait! Keanu shouted at the sky, even though he knew it was useless. Danny wiped his eyes and looked up at the empty sky where the ships had been. The navigator says she's still here. Her consciousness is still connected to all us kids, but her body is going back to space with the ships. For how long? Dr. Webb asked. Until the swarm gets here, Danny said. She says the collective will watch from far away. If humans can prove they can work together and fight the swarm, the ships will come back. Lisa pulled Danny into a hug. How long do we have? Danny closed his eyes and listened. The swarm will be here tomorrow morning. The navigator says it moves faster when it knows its prey can't escape. But we can still fight it, right? Keanu asked. You said humans have special brains that can confuse the swarm. Yes, Danny said. But now we have to learn how to use our brains as weapons without the collective's teachers. The navigator can still talk to us kids, but she can't send down the grown-up teachers she planned to send. Agent Clark put his phone away. So we have less than 12 hours to figure out how to fight something that's eaten hundreds of planets. And we have to do it without any help except what a bunch of kids can tell us. The navigator says it's not impossible, Danny said. She says humans are more creative than any species she's ever met. We just have to believe in ourselves the way she believes in us. Dr. Webb looked around at the group. Then we better get started. Danny, can you contact all the other kids around the world? We need to gather every piece of information the navigator has given them. I can do better than that, Danny said. The navigator taught me how to share what I know directly with other people. I can put the information right into their heads. How? Keanu asked. Danny smiled for the first time since the ships had left. The same way the navigator put information into my head. But first you have to believe it's possible. You have to open your mind to thoughts that seem crazy. I've been practicing that my whole career, Keanu said. Good, Danny replied. Because the navigator says the most important weapon against the swarm isn't logic or science. It's imagination. And humans have more imagination than any other species in the universe. He looked up at the empty sky where the silver ships had been. Tomorrow morning we're going to find out if that's enough to save our world. It was 3 in the morning when Danny woke up screaming. Lisa rushed to his bed and found him sitting up with his eyes wide open, staring at something that wasn't there. Danny, what's wrong? She asked, pulling him into her arms. It's here, Danny whispered. The swarm is at the edge of our solar system. The navigator says it's moving toward Earth really fast now. They were in a special room at the Project Starwatch facility. Dr. Webb had given them a place to sleep while the adults worked all night trying to prepare for the morning attack. But sleep had been impossible for everyone. Lisa looked out the window and saw lights on in buildings all across the city. Nobody was sleeping tonight. The whole world knew that something terrible was coming with the sunrise. How much time do we have? Lisa asked. Danny closed his eyes and listened to the navigator's voice. About 4 hours, the swarm will reach Earth when the sun comes up. A knock came at the door. Dr. Webb entered with Keanu and Agent Clark. They all looked tired and worried. Danny, we need your help, Dr. Webb said. We've been trying to contact the other children around the world, but some of them are too scared to use their abilities. The governments are panicking too, Agent Clark added. Half of them still think we should try to fight the swarm with missiles and bombs. Danny shook his head. The navigator says weapons won't work. The swarm isn't solid like a ship or a building. It's like trying to shoot smoke with bullets. Then how do we fight it? Keanu asked. Danny got out of bed and walked to the window. Even though it was still dark outside, the sky looked different. There was a strange flickering in the stars, like they were trying to hide behind invisible clouds. The navigator says, "We fight it with our minds," Danny said. "But not just one mind at a time. We need lots of people thinking together at the same time." How many people? Dr. Webb asked. As many as possible, Danny replied. The navigator says the more minds that join together, the stronger the weapon becomes. Lisa stood up and joined Danny at the window. But how do we get millions of people to think the same thoughts at the same time? Danny smiled, and for a moment he looked like a normal 5-year-old again. We don't make them think the same thoughts. We make them think different thoughts all at once. Crazy thoughts, impossible thoughts, thoughts that don't make any sense. That sounds like the opposite of working together, Agent Clark said. It is the opposite, Danny said. That's what makes it work. The swarm expects minds to think in patterns that make sense, when millions of people think random, crazy thoughts all at the same time. It creates noise that hurts the swarm's brain. Dr. Webb sat down at her computer and started typing. So we need to organize the biggest brainstorming session in human history, and we need to do it in 4 hours. 3 hours and 50 minutes, Danny corrected, looking at the clock on the hull, while Keanu pulled out his phone. I know people in the movie industry, musicians, artists, creative people who are used to thinking outside the box, and I can contact every government and military base in the world, Agent Clark said. We'll tell them to get their people to think as creatively as possible. But how do we tell everyone else? Lisa asked. Regular people who are just trying to survive the night? Danny walked back to his bed and sat down. The navigator taught me something special. I can connect my mind to television and radio signals. I can talk to everyone in the world at the same time. Dr. Webb stopped typing and stared at him. You can broadcast telepathically through electronic devices? The navigator says human technology works differently than other species' technology. Your machines are built by creative minds, so they can carry creative thoughts. Agent Clark was already on his phone. I'm calling every television station and radio station in the world. We need them to clear their schedules and let Danny broadcast. What will you tell people to think about? Dr. Webb asked Danny. Danny closed his eyes and listened to the navigator. Everything impossible. Dragons and unicorns and flying elephants. Stories that never happened but feel real. Dreams about places that don't exist. The weirder and more impossible, the better. What about people who aren't good at imagining things? Lisa asked. Everyone is good at it, Danny said. Even the most serious grown-up has crazy dreams at night. The navigator says humans can't help but think impossible thoughts. It's what makes you human. The room became busy as everyone started making phone calls. Dr. Webb contacted scientists around the world. Agent Clark talked to military leaders. Keanu called everyone he knew in Hollywood. While the adults worked, Danny walked to the center of the room and sat on the floor. He closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, looking for the other children around the world. Emma, Carlos, Ben, can everyone hear me? One by one, the voices of the other children answered in his head. Emma from Tokyo, Carlos from Mexico City, Ben from London, the twins Anna and Luis from Brazil, and 7 others from different countries. The navigator says it's time, Danny told them. We need to help all the grown-ups think together. My parents are really scared, Emma said in his mind. They don't understand how thinking can fight monsters. Tell them to think about their favorite fairy tale, Danny replied. Tell them to imagine the story is real and they're living inside it. Ben's voice came through clearly from London. The scientists here want to know exactly how the mental weapon works. Danny smiled even though his eyes were closed. Tell them not to think like scientists. Tell them to think like children playing pretend games. For the next hour, Danny and the other children worked together, connecting their minds to electronic devices around the world. Television programs stopped their normal shows and started broadcasting Danny's voice. Radio stations played his message over and over. Hello, everyone on Earth, Danny's voice said through every speaker and television on the planet. My name is Danny, and I'm 5 years old. In about 2 hours, something very bad is coming to our planet. But we can stop it if we all think together. I need everyone to use their imagination. Think about the most impossible, crazy, wonderful things you can imagine. Think about flying horses and talking trees and cities made of candy. Think about superheroes and magic spells and time machines. Don't worry if your thoughts seem silly. Silly thoughts are the best weapons we have. The monster that's coming to Earth can't understand thoughts that don't make sense. So please, everyone, use your imagination. Think about everything you wished was real when you were a kid. Think about every story you loved, every dream you had, every impossible thing you wanted to believe in. Around the world, people stopped what they were doing and listened to the little boy's voice. In hospitals, doctors started imagining they could heal people with magic potions. In offices, business people thought about flying to work on dragons. In schools, teachers pictured their classrooms floating in space. How will we know if it's working? Dr. Webb asked. Danny opened his eyes and looked at her. The navigator says we'll know because the sky will start changing colors. When millions of people think impossible thoughts at the same time, even reality gets a little confused. As if on cue, the first hints of dawn appeared outside the window. But instead of the normal orange and pink of sunrise, the sky was turning purple and green. It's starting, Danny said. The swarm is here and so are we. Agent Clark looked out the window at the strange colors in the sky. Are we really going to fight aliens with imagination? Danny stood up and walked to the window. High above the city, a dark cloud was forming. It looked like smoke at first, but then it began moving in patterns that smoke never moved in. We're not fighting them with imagination, Danny said quietly. We're fighting them with the most powerful thing humans have. We're fighting them with the ability to believe in things that aren't real and make other people believe in them too. The dark cloud in the sky grew bigger and started moving toward the ground. The real battle was about to begin. The dark cloud covered half the sky now, and it was moving toward the ground like a living storm. But this storm was made of something worse than rain or wind. It was made of hunger that wanted to eat every thought on Earth. Danny stood at the window with his hands pressed against the glass. All around the world, millions of people were thinking impossible thoughts just like he had asked them to. But the swarm kept coming. Is it working? Dr. Webb asked, watching the strange purple and green colors swirling in the sky. The navigator says yes and no, Danny replied. The crazy thoughts are hurting the swarm, but it's too big. We need more people thinking. and we need them to think even crazier thoughts. Lisa knelt down next to her son. Danny, what if people can't think of anything else? What if they run out of impossible ideas? Danny smiled and looked at his mother. Mom, humans never run out of impossible ideas. Watch. He closed his eyes and spoke through every television and radio on Earth again. Hello everyone, this is Danny. I can see that the monster is still coming, but don't give up. I want to tell you something amazing. Right now in Tokyo, a little girl named Emma is imagining that her pet cat can fly and shoot rainbow lasers from its eyes. In London, a boy named Ben is thinking about a library where all the books come alive and dance around the room. Brazil, twins named Anna and Luis are imagining that their grandmother can turn into a giant butterfly and carry them to a planet made of chocolate. As Danny spoke, people around the world began smiling despite their fear. They started thinking of even sillier, more impossible things. In New York, a businessman imagined his briefcase was actually a portal to a dimension where numbers sang, opera. In Paris, a baker thought about bread that could grow into trees with croissants for leaves. The dark cloud in the sky began to slow down. Parts of it started flickering, like a television with bad reception. It's working, Keanu shouted. The swarm is getting confused. But the celebration was too early. The dark cloud suddenly changed shape, becoming thicker and more solid. It began moving faster toward the ground. The navigator says the swarm is adapting, Danny said, his voice worried. It's learning to ignore some of our thoughts. We need to think of something it can't adapt to. What could that be? Agent Clark asked. Danny was quiet for a long moment, listening to the navigator's voice. Then his face lit up with understanding. Love, he said simply. The navigator says the swarm has never encountered love before. Every species it ate was too scared to feel love when it arrived. How do we make millions of people think about love when they're terrified? Dr. Webb asked. Danny looked around the room at all the adults who had been taking care of him. We tell them the truth. We tell them why we're really fighting. He spoke through the broadcast system one more time. Hello everyone, this is Danny again. I want you to stop thinking about silly things for just a minute and think about love instead. Think about the people you love most in the world. Think about your children, your parents, your friends. Think about your pets and your favorite places and all the beautiful things that make you happy. Now imagine that you have magic powers and you can protect everything you love just by thinking about it. Imagine that your love is like a bright light that can push away any darkness. The monster that's coming to Earth doesn't understand love. It doesn't know what it feels like to care about someone else more than yourself. So when we think about love, it gets confused and scared. Around the world, something beautiful began to happen. People stopped thinking about random impossible things and started thinking about the real impossible thing. The fact that in a universe full of cold, empty space, somehow humans had learned to love each other. Parents thought about their children. Children thought about their families. Friends thought about each other. Strangers thought about helping people they had never met. The sky began to change again. The purple and green colors became brighter and warmer. The dark cloud stopped moving toward the ground and started breaking apart into smaller pieces. The navigator says the swarm is really confused now, Danny reported. It can't understand why humans would risk their lives to protect other humans. That kind of thinking doesn't make sense to it. But the battle wasn't over yet. The pieces of the dark cloud began joining back together, forming something new. Instead of one big cloud, the swarm became thousands of smaller clouds that moved in different directions. It's trying to surround the planet, Dr. Webb said, watching the clouds spread out across the sky. Danny closed his eyes and reached out with his mind to all the other children around the world. Everyone, we need to do something the navigator never taught us. We need to think together as one big human mind. How? Asked Emma's voice in his head. By remembering that we're all connected, Danny replied. Every person on Earth is part of the same human family. When one person thinks about love, it makes it easier for everyone else to think about love too. Danny opened his eyes and spoke to the adults in the room. I need you to help me. Take my hands and think about everything you love most. Lisa took Danny's right hand. Keanu took his left hand. Dr. Webb and Agent Clark joined hands with them, forming a circle. Now think about how much you love all the people on Earth, even the ones you've never met, Danny said. As they thought about love, something amazing happened. Their thoughts began to connect not just with each other, but with people all around the world. The circle in the room became a circle that included everyone on the planet. In Tokyo, Emma felt the connection and reached out to hold her parents' hands. In London, Ben grabbed his mother and father. In Brazil, Anna and Luis held their grandmother's hands. All around the world, people began holding hands with the people next to them. The thousands of dark clouds in the sky began to shake and flicker. The swarm had never encountered anything like this before, in an entire planet full of beings who chose to love each other instead of just trying to survive. "The navigator says the swarm is retreating," Danny shouted. "It can't handle this much love and connection." One by one, the dark clouds began to fade away. They didn't disappear all at once, but slowly, like nightmares fading when you wake up in the morning. The sky returned to its normal blue color as the sun finished rising. The void swarm was gone, confused and defeated by something it had never learned to understand. High above the earth, the silver ships of the Zenith Collective appeared again. This time they descended slowly and peacefully, landing in fields and parks around the world. "The navigator says her people want to come back now," Danny said, tears of happiness running down his face. "They want to learn about love from humans." Dr. Webb looked out the window at one of the silver ships landing in the park across the street. "So what happens now?" Danny let go of everyone's hands and walked to the window. "Now we teach them what we learned today. We teach them that the strongest force in the universe isn't technology or weapons or even imagination." "What is it then?" Keanu asked. Danny smiled, the biggest smile of his life. "It's the impossible idea that people can care about each other more than they care about themselves. The navigator says that's something no other species in the galaxy has ever figured out." Lisa hugged her son. "And it all started because a 5-year-old boy whispered something to a famous actor in a McDonald's." "The navigator says that's how the best things always start," Danny replied. "With someone brave enough to believe in impossible things and share them with others." Outside the window, the first aliens in human history stepped out of their silver ships. They looked different from humans, but when they saw the people waiting to meet them, they did something that looked very much like smiling. The age of humans and aliens working together had begun, and it had started with the most human thing of all, a child's belief that love could save the world.